When people say football is more than just a game, they usually mean it metaphorically. But in 1969, for two nations, this statement became terrifyingly literal. That year, over 6,000 people lost their lives, hundreds of thousands were left homeless, and a 4-day war swept through two countries in Central America. An event occurred that would be etched into the history books forever. And what sparked this bloodshed? A World Cup qualifying match. In today's video, we'll tell the story of the football war. Before diving into the football, we need to understand the deeper roots of this conflict. At the heart of the story are two neighboring nations, El Salvador and Honduras. Although they share a border, the differences between them are stark. El Salvador's territory is just 1/5 the size of Honduras. Yet by the late 1960s, nearly 1 million more people lived there. This overpopulation meant that almost every part of El Salvador was either developed or cultivated, leaving little room for the primarily agricultural population to survive. Meanwhile, Honduras had vast, unused lands. As a result, thousands of Salvadorans crossed the border seeking work, land, and opportunity. Some arrived legally, but most settled illegally. Some bought land, others simply took it. Over time, these immigrants made up 20% of the Honduran population. In some areas, they were welcomed, but elsewhere, they were seen as rivals. Tensions were already high, but things escalated in 1963 when Oswaldo López seized power in Honduras. His rise was supported financially by the United Fruit Company, known today as Chiquita, one of the largest banana producers and distributors in the world. The deal was simple. If López came to power, foreign companies would receive major tax breaks and vast land grants. As a result, U.S. corporations came to control 10% of Honduras's farmland, and that percentage kept growing. Honduras was falling under foreign economic control, all while more and more Salvadorans lived on its soil. López publicly blamed Salvadoran immigrants for the agricultural crisis, which fueled a massive wave of hate. Arsons, evictions, and attacks targeted Salvadoran farmers. El Salvador protested, but their complaints fell on deaf ears in the Honduran government. In this explosive moment, football entered the scene. Both countries had topped their groups in the 1970 World Cup qualifiers, meaning a two-legged playoff would decide who advanced. In Latin America, football is more than just a popular sport. It represents national pride, identity, and sometimes life and death. So in this atmosphere, football fanaticism met long-standing political tensions. Both nations had a shot at their first-ever World Cup appearance. Fans treated the matches as if everything was on the line. And as it turned out, it was. The first match was held on June 8th in Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras. Local fans harassed the Salvadoran team all night outside their hotel, beating drums, shouting, and throwing firecrackers. The players got no sleep. Honduras won the match in the 89th minute, and their fans celebrated wildly. The loss enraged Salvadoran fans. In fact, one supporter was so devastated by the defeat, she took her own life. 1 week later, on June 15th, the rematch took place in El Salvador's capital, San Salvador. This time, the Honduran team was the target of harassment. They were kept awake all night and, before the match, instead of their national flag, a rag was raised in the stadium. El Salvador won the match 3-0. During the game, fights broke out in the stands, and 2 Honduran fans were killed. The visiting team had to be evacuated in an armored vehicle as furious fans hurled anything they could get their hands on. One Honduran player later said, "We're lucky we lost that game. If we'd won, we'd be dead." The loss sparked a surge of hate in Honduras. Salvadoran homes were burned. Families were chased out, people were beaten and tortured. Entire communities were torn apart overnight as mobs roamed the streets seeking revenge. Fear spread like wildfire, and thousands of Salvadorans were forced to flee for their lives. With each side having won a match, a third decider was scheduled on neutral ground in Mexico City on June 26th. By that time, diplomatic relations between the two countries had been completely severed. El Salvador even accused Honduras of committing genocide against its citizens. El Salvador won the decider 3-2 after extra time, qualifying for the World Cup. But in Honduras, violence against Salvadorans intensified. They were deported en masse to a homeland that was already overcrowded and impoverished. On July 14, 1969, El Salvador declared war. They bombed Honduran airports and military bases, and ground forces began advancing toward the capital. Initially, the Honduran army was paralyzed, but with aid from Nicaragua, they retaliated, bombing Salvadoran ports and oil depots. An intense stalemate ensued. Both sides used outdated weapons and ran out of supplies quickly. The war lasted just 4 days. On July 18th, the Organization of American States intervened and brokered a ceasefire, guaranteeing the safety and peaceful repatriation of Salvadorans. The war was brief, but devastating. Over 6,000 people died. More than 300,000 Salvadorans were deported back to a country with no resources to support them. The internal tension from this influx eventually sparked a full-blown civil war, leading to even more death and suffering. This is the war the world came to know as the Football War, or the 100-Hour War, but it was far more than that. Football was merely the spark that ignited years of growing tension. And the question that still lingers today, if that match hadn't happened, would the war have broken out anyway? Thanks for watching this video. If you're interested in more incredible football stories, don't forget to subscribe and tell us in the comments, do you think this war could have been prevented?